Nigeria, the richest nation on earth, they're desperate to keep poor. Let me ask you some uncomfortable questions. Why is a country so rich in oil, gas, gold, uranium, lithium, and rare earth minerals ranked among the poorest in the world? Why do over 133 million Nigerians live below the poverty line, yet their soil is richer than Saudi Arabia's, Venezuela's, and even Russia's? Why did Nigeria gain independence from Britain without firing a single bullet, when almost every other colonized country in Africa had to fight, bleed, and die for freedom? Why do Nigerian presidential candidates fly to Chatham House in the UK to give speeches when their real audience should be 200 million people back home? Why are IMF and World Bank policies still determining what Nigeria can and cannot do 60 years after freedom? Why is Nigeria still paying colonial debts? And how exactly is it paying them? Who really controls Nigeria's oil and by extension its future? Now hold those questions in your mind, because the answers are not only disturbing, they are deliberate. Let's start with the myth of poverty. Everyone knows Nigeria has oil, but what they don't tell you is that oil is just the beginning. Nigeria is a gold mine, literally. Take Zamfara, for example, a region so flooded with gold that you can pan it from surface soil. No need for deep mining, yet the people there live in devastating poverty. Children are dying of lead poisoning from unregulated illegal gold extraction that funds cartels, not communities. Then there's Kaduna, Nasarawa, Kogi, Plateau, Ebonyi, and Benue, where you'll find industrial quantities of lithium, cobalt, barite, coltan, niobium, tantalite, and even uranium. These are not luxury minerals. These are essential to the future. Electric vehicles, lithium, smartphones, cobalt and tantalum, satellites, niobium, nuclear energy, uranium. And yet, Nigeria isn't exporting finished products, it's exporting raw suffering. Do you know californium, a rare radioactive element used in nuclear reactors, is worth $27 million per gram? It's rumored to be present in Nigerian geological zones, yet shrouded in secrecy, hidden from the global registry, and deliberately left unmentioned by mainstream geopolitics. Why? Because if Nigeria fully realized its resource power, it would dominate the global economy, not beg for foreign loans. But here's where it gets even more sinister. The oil itself, Nigeria's supposed crown jewel, isn't even fully under Nigerian control. Ask any average Nigerian, how much crude oil does your country pump each day? No one knows, because only foreign multinationals manage the meters. They know the figures. They do the refining abroad. They sell it back as fuel to Nigerians at a markup. Let that sink in. Nigeria produces oil, ships it away, and buys it back. Meanwhile, fuel subsidies are slashed, the naira is devalued, and more people are thrown into extreme poverty. But wait, why can't Nigeria build its own refining infrastructure? Why is the country dependent on imported petrol in the first place? Here's why. Every attempt to become self-reliant has been sabotaged externally and internally. When Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso tried it, he was assassinated. When Gaddafi in Libya proposed a pan-African currency backed by gold, he was bombed to the Stone Age. When Nigeria's leaders talk about full ownership of resources, suddenly there's instability, insecurity, recession, or terrorism. Is that a coincidence or a blueprint? Now let's circle back to Nigeria's independence, the smoothest in all of colonized Africa. Not a single violent confrontation with the British, no war, no martyrs. How did the most populated African country simply walk away from the empire without a drop of blood? The truth, they didn't walk away. They were handed the document and handed over quietly. What if Nigeria's freedom came with strings attached? What if in exchange for flag independence, Britain ensured that all major sectors, oil, finance, education, defense, would remain under foreign influence? That's why 60 years later, British banks still hold sway, foreign companies run the oil rigs, and Nigerian leaders run to London for approval. Why is Chatham House, not Abuja, the real stage for Nigerian politics? Because the power brokers are not in Nigeria. The real campaign trail leads through Western boardrooms, not town halls. And that's where the IMF and World Bank come in. On paper, they offer help. In practice, they cripple. The structural adjustment programs, SAPs of the 1980s, were a death sentence for Nigerian development. Under SAPs, Nigeria had to cut spending on education and healthcare, remove fuel subsidies, devalue the currency, open up markets to Western corporations. The result? Factories died, agriculture collapsed, millions lost jobs. Local industries were wiped out by cheap imports. Why would the IMF demand that Nigeria kill its economy in the name of reform? Because the poorer Nigeria remains, the more desperate it becomes. And desperation leads to control. Now let's look at debt. Do you know that Nigeria still services colonial era debts? These are loans given to Nigeria's colonial governments to build railways and roads for the benefit of the British Empire, not the Nigerian people. After independence, the debts remained, and Nigeria agreed to pay. Decades later, Nigeria still owes money for infrastructure that was used to extract its own wealth. To whom? Western creditors. How? Through oil-backed agreements, foreign bond repayments, and trade policies dictated by foreign consultants. This is why the question of who controls Nigeria's oil is not just economic, it's existential, because whoever controls the oil controls Nigeria, and it isn't the Nigerian people. Look at Angola or even Venezuela. In spite of their own struggles, their governments have nationalized their oil sectors. They control output. They own refining. They dictate prices. Nigeria, still tethered to Shell, Chevron, Total, ExxonMobil, operating under joint venture agreements where Nigeria bears the cost and the companies take the profit. Why hasn't this changed in over 6 decades? Because every time Nigeria tries to break free, political crisis erupts, terrorism spikes, foreign investors pull out, or currency collapses. It's a pattern, not a coincidence. Now ask yourself this: if Nigeria's mineral wealth was fully controlled, refined, and marketed by Nigerians, if its oil was domestically refined, distributed, and priced, if its lithium was turned into EV batteries right in Jos instead of being exported as raw ore to China or the West, if its youth were empowered with knowledge factories and leadership, would Nigeria still be called a developing nation, or would it be a global superpower? You see, Nigeria isn't poor. Nigeria is being looted, not by bandits in the forest, by boardrooms in London, by multinationals in the Gulf of Guinea, by the ghost of colonialism wearing a suit and tie, handing out development loans with one hand and stealing trillions with the other. It is a controlled poverty, a well-oiled poverty machine, and the moment Nigerians start asking the real questions, the engine breaks. So now I ask you again, who controls Nigeria's oil? Why did your presidents fly to London, not to your villages? Why are you poor in a land of unimaginable wealth? The answer isn't foreign aid. It isn't more elections. It isn't even just corruption. The answer is sovereignty, real economic sovereignty. Until Nigeria breaks free from this colonial loop and reclaims its birthright, not as beggars but as builders, the chains remain. But the moment truth becomes widespread, the lie collapses. You've seen the pieces. Now it's time to put the puzzle together. Nigeria is not just Africa's sleeping giant. Nigeria is the richest nation on earth, held hostage by silence. And the only thing more powerful than their grip is your awakening. Share this message before they bury it, because the day Nigeria wakes up is the day the world changes.